the more we focus on making those kinds of connections and supporting those kinds of connections with our money, with our dropping by and buying coffee and say, hey, thanks, really appreciate what you're doing here. That kind of thing, that kind of support is intentional, goes out of the way to be intentional, and understands that, yeah, I probably could get a cheaper cup of coffee at McDonald's. It's probably by a third the price, literally, or a fourth the price. And yet I prefer to go and spend $4 on a cup of coffee at the open air, the independent. By the way, also both of these cafes now that they have their independent, the independent coffee shop, instead of just going to a McDonald's. You know, a utilitarian would say, no, just go to McDonald's, right? And but there's a larger benefit and a lower, therefore, price that you're paying.
I love the idea that we just we basically just vote with our dollars, essentially. I love like taking control of that, and not even with our dollars, but with our interactions that we choose to have with with whether or not we say hi to people and how much we really invite that local community to grow everywhere we go. I love the empowering aspect of that.
And it's very intentional. What I think is very important is you have to be intentional about it. You have to say, I'm going to shop here. Why? Because the person who owns this store also funds or contributes money to the junior high theater group or the Little League or the library. You know, I could shop at Walmart, but Walmart's going to take that money and put it somewhere else that's far from my town.
Oh, it's interesting thinking about it like a localism tax, right? Like you pay $4 not necessarily just because you want to support the local business and you want to give it to the business person, but because the business person collects that money and then is a business person and is able to invest it and is able to put it to work inside the community.
Hires more local people, and that money also then, one of the things that goes into local cultural and sports things. Like I had this very interesting conversation. I'm not even sure she knew how important it was to me, with a woman who had retired but was in banking for many, many years. And she had watched as the community banks had been just withered. Now, there still exist some of them, but it clearly not to the degree they once did. And she said, that people don't understand what you lose when you lose a community bank. First of all, you lose a banker who knows everybody by name, or many people by name, who goes to church, who goes to the Friday night football games, who's at the Chamber of Commerce meeting and the Rotary meeting and all that stuff. That person is invested in that town in a way that you don't get from chain store banks, basically. And the other thing is that those banks, the community banks, are the ones that fund the small sports, cultural stuff that the big banks won't touch. They probably are unaware of it. But they'll support those small community banks. Will fund the local theater group, right? Those small local banks will fund the Little League and so on. Whereas the big banks, all they want to be part of is putting their names on a opera hall or a children's zoo, or something like that, where they can get a lot of benefit from it. The smaller the banks, the more locally oriented the banks, the more that they're going to be funding and making proper business decisions too about what money to loan on top of that, and because they know the people better. That may mean that some people don't get a loan because they know them real well. And it may mean that other people do get a loan, even though they probably on paper don't deserve one, because the people know them real well. And so all of that is what we've done. That's part of our community shredding that's gone on, frankly, in the last 40 years, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you know the Mondragon Corporation?
I don't think I do, no.
So the Mondragon Corporation is one of my favorite examples of this community success story. It was started by Jose Arzmendiera in the aftermath of World War II, when the fascists had taken over Spain. He was a Jesuit priest who was teaching in a small town in Basque country. And he was kind of a communist. And there's no other way to say that. And he basically taught the kids, where he was like, look, if you want to make it in this world, you have to be the ones that own the production. And so they figured out how to start building stuff. I think that they were building like small machine parts, and eventually
communist in the sense of like we can all work together and make this happen, not in the sense of like totalitarian Stalinism or something.
Yeah, like no purges involved here. So basically, and correct me if I'm getting into the details wrong.
It's been a while since I studied this, but essentially they build a town where the workers own everything. They own the banking structure,
a hospital, a university.
Schools. Like it's quite worker ownership in general is a really fascinating concept that America could really stand to educate themselves about. I mean, there's some crazy success stories.
I just think it all gets back to, my feeling is less communism than localism, forging ahead by supporting people who are not going to take that money and take it and give it to shareholders in another part of the country or whatever.
That's exactly what this is.
And that's exactly what worker ownership is. No shareholders are allowed to own any part of the business. The only shareholders are the workers. That's it. Once you stop working for the place, you're not a shareholder anymore. And so they're not capable of polluting their own towns and making these terrible decisions that corporate structures are capable of making, because it's in their backyard at all times. Every decision directly affects them. And they've been, a lot of these companies have been wildly profitable.
I mean, Mondragon is the third largest corporation in Spain to this day. They made $15 billion in, I think, 2015. Like, this is a hugely powerful, incredibly...
It's not a communist idea.
Yeah, it's not like they're super. I
think that was the wrong thing to say.
Like, they're super capitalist, but they found a way to make it compassionate capitalism that supports local community to an immense degree, and they're bound together culturally.
I've seen it in other places, and I just really like to support that. I think and you must make an intentional choice to do that. Because there are always going to probably be, on the surface, cheaper ways of getting what you want. And you have to say, but that comes with a tax. And the tax is that they're not supporting the community, that pretty soon you're going to get overrun by dope. Pretty soon you're going to be overrun by crime. Pretty soon dope dealers are going to see your town as like this perfect place to come flood your streets with their evil top poison. All of that comes when you decide I can get something cheaper somewhere else. And it doesn't matter if I support my mom and pop. It doesn't matter if I don't support my mom and pop, that yes, is going to be twice as expensive, maybe more so than say the Walmart outside of town. There's no doubt about that. There's simply no doubt about that. But it's this way of saying, I want to do everything I can because I understand the tax that I'm paying.
And then you're less dependent on these gods then at that point too, right? It's like there's not these like nebulous entities just like shadowing over your life then, because you're like, whatever, like I don't really care what Walmart does or what, the big government does or whatever it is, because I'm actually taking control of my life right here, right now.